Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Leslie and thank you for being here. If you like videos on frugality and simple living, you are in the right place. I also have a budget with me series, so if you are looking for something to throw on in the background while you're cleaning or working or whatever, that is a really great place to start. Sorry if I sound a little weird. I've been sick for like a week and a half now. So I was super sick last week and now I'm on the end of it, but my voice is still a little weird. Hopefully that's not too annoying. But for today's video, I just wanted to talk about something that has been on my mind for a little while. I don't know if it's just from being sick where my brain is already just fatigued and overwhelmed, but I have really been noticing the effects of information overload recently. And by the way, this is Pixel. She is crawling around all over the place, so you might see her tail. But anyway, information overload. This is something that I have been dealing with for a long time, and it just seems to be getting worse as the years go by, especially with the effects of technology. If you're someone who has something like ADHD like I do, then you might be especially prone to this, but I think a lot of people in general are suffering from this. So for me, I tend to really crave that mental stimulation. So I always want to be learning things. I'm always looking up information. And the fact that it's now just at everyone's fingertips, well, I mean, not recently, but it's been that way for a while and getting more and more accessible. But since it's at your fingertips, it is so easy to just overload your brain with all the things you want to know. Our algorithms on all these social media platforms make it so easy to fall into rabbit holes and just get sucked into whatever your current interest is. Short form content is one thing that can really exacerbate this whole information overload because you are learning so much information in just a minute or two, maybe 30 seconds, these very short clips, and your brain is just not equipped to handle all that information coming in. And one thing that can make it worse, especially on something like TikTok, where you're scrolling through your For You page, you can have so many different types of videos show up. So for me, I might have something like a crochet video, I might have a gardening video, a budgeting video. So there's all these different subjects that are being thrown at you. So I might get a quick snippet of like a gardening hack, and then I get a crochet technique, and then I get a budget with me video. It's just all of these different things that are being thrown, and it's really hard to change your attention that quickly and receive that much information on so many different subjects in a very short period of time. There are so many ways that, sorry, the sun is like going up and down and it's being really weird right now, the lighting. There are so many different positives to this kind of information access that we have nowadays. It used to be so different, like back when I was in high school, and even before that. I remember having projects in middle school before the internet was so widespread and like so accessible, and I would have to figure out information. I'm like, where do I even start? An encyclopedia? Like, what do I do? It was so hard to get information, and if it was something you want to research on your own where you don't have something like a school or encyclopedia or some of these resources, it was just so hard to get information. So the fact that everything is so accessible now is such a big plus. It is so nice. It makes it so easy for people to learn about any subject they want to know. So in addition to convenience, there's also the affordability of learning information. You have access to libraries, obviously the internet, social media. You can get this information for free in many cases, or at least really cheap. Whereas in the past, you might have had to go and get a whole degree in a subject. Now you can look at lectures from college professors on YouTube. You can take courses online. You can look at YouTube videos. I mean, there's so many ways to learn things. You can also get inspiration and motivation from other people. Any of the things that I've learned and taught myself, especially craft related, it's things that I've seen other people do and I wanted to learn. Things like crochet, macrame, quilting, I mean, all kinds of things that I've learned. I have a lot of hobbies. And in addition to that, you can find connection with other people. So you can go on places like Reddit, you can look at YouTube comments. There are just so many places where you can connect with other people who are into the same things as you. It's just a great way to build a community. If you have any questions that you can't find answers to, there are lots of resources where you can ask other people, start a discussion. I mean, it's just endless. And finally, as I mentioned before, you can get a nice dopamine boost. So that mental stimulation from learning something new, where you might otherwise find that dopamine hit in something that is much less healthy than learning. So it's a great way to get that little dopamine hit in a healthy way. But anything that is healthy can always be taken to the extreme. And that's where I want to get into some of the negatives of this information that's so accessible. So the main negative aspect is what I've already mentioned about just the mental overload. So things like your brain not being able to process so much information at one time. You are getting so many ideas. You are sometimes getting conflicting information. So someone might say that there is one way to do something, someone else says there's another way. There are just endless conflicts that can arise when you're delving into some of these subjects. And since it's all coming at you so fast, your brain just doesn't have time to process and separate these ideas, and it just gets overwhelmed. Similar to that is burnout disguised as productivity. So you are taking in all this information, getting overloaded with all of these ideas, and you feel like you're doing something, but in reality, you're just overwhelming your brain, taking in all of this random information, and then you may not even act on it because you are so overwhelmed with what you're receiving. So you are constantly learning and planning, and you may not even get to the stage where you actually act on something. I've been guilty of this, especially with craft patterns or learning a new hobby. So you might collect a ton of patterns, have all these ideas saved, and you spend all of your time doing that to where you don't actually start doing the thing. And this is something I've seen on Reddit, especially in the crochet community. I love the crochet subreddit. There's some really cute stuff on there, and really impressive stuff. But anyway, I always see people there that are talking about how to crochet, what's the best way to start, what's the best piece that you should do the first time. And those are all valid questions, but the thing that will get you going with a new hobby is to just start doing it. You don't know what you're gonna like or the problems you're gonna have until you just start doing the thing. And it's also much more fulfilling to actually just start doing the thing instead of just learning about it, because you're actually starting the process yourself. Another thing that's a negative is that rest becomes very uncomfortable. And this is such a big thing for me, where I cannot sit still and just be. I have to be doing something or listening to something or learning something. It is just so hard to calm down. And I think that is so common, especially with all of us having access to our phones and social media. We always want to be scrolling or in some cases learning something. It just goes back to that mental stimulation. You want to be doing something. So rest just becomes very uncomfortable because you almost feel guilty, like you need to be productive, and it's hard to just sit there and just live and be in the moment. I think a lot of times I fall into productive rest. So a situation where if I have some downtime and I'm just relaxing, but I need something going. So I'll put a video on, I will start reading, learning about something. It's hard for me to just sit there. I need that mental stimulation, but it's really important to be able to turn that off and relax because your brain needs it. It does not need to be flooded with all this information. And as someone who also has anxiety, it's something that can really contribute to those anxious feelings because your brain is just so overstimulated and it can't relax. Another thing that can stem from this is comparison and pressure. So you may compare yourselves to others that you see online. You may feel pressure to create these perfect things, especially in terms of hobbies. You may feel pressure to just gain as much knowledge as you can in a short period of time. So the pressure to become an expert immediately without just taking time to work your way up to that and learn a little bit at a time. It can also lead to reduced creativity and reduced focus, which I guess seems obvious because your brain can't take the time to focus on one thing. But in terms of creativity, it can really affect the way you come up with ideas. So if you are always flooding your brain with what's already out there, so other videos you see, other people's projects, just all this information, you have very little time for your Sorry, the cat's shaking the camera. You have very little time or brain power to be coming up with your own ideas. I mean, there's a reason that so many people come up with their best ideas in the shower. That is one of the few times where people are just quiet in their own mind. Unless you're me and you listen to stuff while you're in the shower, or my husband does the same thing. I'm sure a lot of people do that now, but it's really important. And I'm telling this to myself as well, that it is really important to try to just cut off for a little bit, at least while you're in the shower or something, and let your brain just relax, unwind, do its thing, come up with its own ideas. I have noticed that in some of those rare quiet times that I give myself is when I come up with some of my best ideas. Things for like my Etsy shop, things for YouTube videos, just things in my life, just little things I want to do or do differently. It tends to happen during those quiet times because that's when you're giving your brain the opportunity to think of these things. So emotional and mental fatigue and anxiety are just such a big thing, and it can really exacerbate issues if you have ADHD or anxiety or that kind of thing. It can really make those problems worse. It gets your brain stuck in that loop of trying to find this mental stimulation, and it just cannot relax. It can also be anxiety provoking because if you're watching these videos or just finding information where things are conflicting, it can be really confusing, and it's hard to take the time to sort out what's right and with all the conflicting information. So that's another reason that it can cause some anxiety because you just don't know what to listen to. And then finally, it's just an addictive loop that you can get yourself into, like falling down these rabbit holes or learning new things. And it's so weird to say learning new things as a negative, but like I said, even positive things can become a negative if they get addicting or too overwhelming. A lot of stuff like that has downsides. So even though you know that you need to take time to relax, you just get stuck in scrolling and stuck with finding new information. I mean, it can be really compelling, like some of these short videos that show different hacks and things. I definitely fall into just scrolling through those. So in some ways, you start to just look for that stimulation, the mental stimulation. It becomes more about that than actually the process of learning new information. So with all of that said, with the positives and negatives, what are some things that you can do to kind of combat some of those negative aspects? So I have my little list here that I made. So the very first one is going to be unfollowing some of these accounts that really contribute to that overstimulation and the mental exhaustion. So things like accounts that share a lot of hacks. Some of these are really great and really interesting, but if you're like me, how many times do you watch a video about some kind of hack and then you're like, oh, that's a great idea, I should do that. You might even save the video. How often do you really come back to that? Because I know a lot of times I just immediately forget it, and even if I save it, I don't come back to it. So accounts like that where you're getting a lot of information but you're never really using it, it might be a good idea to unfollow some of those accounts, especially if it's things especially when it comes to the short form content, because that's just getting thrown at you in these small pieces, and it's a lot of information to take in. And similarly, if you don't want to completely unfollow, you could also mute some of these accounts for a short time and see if you even miss them, because you might not, especially on places like Instagram, you can just mute it. Or another option would be to just turn off notifications. So that is probably the number one thing you can do. If you don't want to jump into like unsubscribing and muting, just turn off the notifications so that it's not popping up in your face like every 5 seconds. Another thing is, if you are like me and you tend to fall into rabbit holes, try not to take in so much information at once. Try to kind of pace yourself with that. And that's one way that you can kind of remember some of this information better anyway, if you pace yourself, because it gives your brain time for some of this to sink in. And I know that is so much easier said than done, because if I am caught in an idea or a new hobby or something, it is just my entire life 24/7 is all I think about. It's all I want to do. I kind of love it, but it also definitely has its downside. So this is something that I try to do also. If there's a new interest I have, just pace yourself, because all the information is still going to be there tomorrow. You can read a little bit today, maybe set a timer, just look up information for like 30 minutes and then try again tomorrow. Because honestly, even if you read even if you spend 8 hours of your day learning all this information, what are the chances that all of that is going to sink in? It's pretty low. You're probably not going to remember all of it anyway. And similar to that is just setting boundaries as far as scrolling. I know my husband tends to do this on his phone where he'll only allow himself certain time within apps. I don't know how he sets it up exactly in his phone, but he'll set it to where he can only be on Instagram for like this much time during the day. And then once that time is up, he can't get back in. So I wish I knew how he did that. I need to ask him. But for me, I don't need, you know what? I don't limit myself. I'm not even gonna lie. I just try to keep it in my head that I don't need to be scrolling all day. I don't have a whole lot of time, especially in the evening when I get home. So I tend to just naturally tell myself not to scroll after like, I think like 8:30 is when I really start to wind down. So I think it sort of comes naturally, luckily, because I'm very set on late into the night, like before I go to bed, I always read just to calm my brain a little bit, and that tends to help a lot. So yeah, only using social media at certain times of the day is another way to do it if you don't want to set like specific time limits. So another thing is that you don't have to track and optimize everything you do. So if you're someone who likes to be super productive, you like to min-max everything the way I do, it is okay to not track everything. It's okay to, or at least not every day. It's honestly, I think it's kind of fun. I don't know if I'm just a weirdo. I love tracking things. Like I track my calories and my macros and my steps and just random habits I'm trying to pick up or stop. Like I don't know, I do all the things. So I'm starting to see why I am very prone to anxiety, but I am pretty good about if I miss a day of tracking something or it's not perfect, I really don't care that much. It's because it's something that is meant to just be kind of fun for me. But yeah, don't be so strict with tracking things. Another thing you can do is to repeat meals, repeat outfits, do all of these things that kind of cut back on how many decisions you're making through the day. This can kind of help calm your mind. So like I do meal prep, I lay out all my outfits for the week on a Sunday, and a lot of times I tend to just repeat the outfits week to week. So that's really nice. It's something that takes a lot of decisions off of my plate. So every day I have pretty much all my meals ready to go. I have my outfits ready to go. I do it for my daughter's outfits as well. It's just so simple. So that is something you can do. Just try to cut back on the number of decisions you're making throughout the day so that your brain isn't thinking all of these extra things like, oh, what am I going to have for breakfast? What am I going to have for lunch? What am I going to do when I get home? It's just all these things take up extra brain power. I actually thought about making a whole video on limiting decisions, and actually I still might, because that's one thing that's really helped to like change my life. I mean, I know that sounds like I'm exaggerating, but it makes such a big difference that it's something that I think is really important. When it comes to things like hobbies, it is important to just have something that you do for fun. You don't have to make a business out of it. You don't have to make everything perfect. This is something that also is easier said than done, and I am speaking to myself as well. But last year, so I've crocheted for a long time. I macrame. My Etsy shop is macrame. I have another one where I draw embroidery patterns. So I am really prone to wanting to turn everything I do into a business. Like, how can I make money with what I'm doing? And in an effort to stop doing that, last year I learned how to knit, and I love knitting, and I decided knitting is just for me. I am not going to sell anything knitting related. I am not going to try to make patterns. I'm not going to do anything with knitting that stresses me out. And if I'm working on a pattern that is stressful, I'm going to stop. I want knitting to be my fun hobby, something that I just do for enjoyment and to unwind. And I have kept that up for a year, and I'm so proud of myself for just letting that be my hobby. And it's just so nice to have something like that where it is only for you. And I actually do this with reading as well. When I was starting this channel, I thought about making it book related because I do read a ton of books every year, but I do not want to turn reading into something I'm doing for, well, this isn't really business because I don't make money with YouTube, but you know what I mean? Like I didn't want it to become stressful to read, because reading is it's probably my top way that I unwind, because I do it every night before bed. So I didn't want to feel any pressure related to reading. So another thing related to all this is to avoid excessive self-improvement and productivity content. So if you do follow a lot of accounts where it's about productivity and improving on yourself and all of these things you can do, some of that can start to stress you out after a while. So I guess just know to limit yourself with that content, or maybe pick and choose who you subscribe to with that. But I know I fall into that where I want to improve on everything, so I will follow these accounts that have all kinds of tips on productivity and all of this stuff. And honestly, at a certain point, it just starts to stress you out because you're thinking about all these things that you could be doing better than you're currently doing, when honestly, some of the stuff is just unnecessary anyway, and no one is perfect with all of that. So if there are things you're following that are making you just feel bad about yourself or feel pressured, it might be a good idea to just unfollow them, or at least limit your exposure to that kind of thing. Another one, if you are someone who is really into the news and being up on all of the current topics, that is something that can cause a lot of anxiety. And I was someone who used to do that as well. I used to want to be up to date on every topic, know everything about everything, and just politics and news and all of this all the time. And all it did was make me anxious and depressed. So just try to limit your exposure to things like the news or politics related stuff. I mean, it is important to be informed to an extent, but not so much that it takes a toll on your mental health. So, and if headlines are big enough, you're just going to hear about it in your day-to-day life anyway. So there are things that, a lot of information that I don't seek out, but I hear about it anyway because I hear other people talking about it. And if it's something that I find interesting, or it sounds kind of odd, like they might be incorrect in what they're saying, then I'll look into it a little further. But for the most part, I try not to get too deep into current events, just because they're always so depressing and things that make me anxious anyway. And I'm someone who is just prone to anxiety. So if you're like that, it might be a good idea to just kind of step back from that thing. Or at the very most, maybe set aside, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes of your day to just scroll through the headlines, get the general idea, and that's it. But the thing that you don't want to be doing is watching the news like 24/7. That can definitely take a toll on your mental health for sure. And then similar to that, like since I mentioned politics, if you are someone who consumes a lot of political information or information that's very divisive. Sorry, I don't know how to say that word. Divisive. If you consume a lot of information like that, then it might be a good idea to stay out of the comments, because if there's a video you see and you super like disagree with it, or it's something that has people very divided, if you go to the comments, there are probably going to be people arguing in the comments, and it might be a good idea just to sit that out. Don't let your brain get sucked into some of this debate. I mean, it's not like you're going to change their mind anyway. It's just something that would potentially make you feel better, I guess, to get it off your chest. But just let your brain chill out and don't even worry about it. Just go to the next video or whatever you want to do. So another thing that is good for you to do, as I mentioned with relaxing, it is just to accept boredom. Try to actively find time in your day to be bored if you can. I know I'm so freaking busy all the time. Like there is no way that I mean, I won't say there's no way, but it's really hard to carve out boredom into my day. But just have a little bit of time, even if it's just a few minutes here and there, where you just disconnect. So you turn off the TV, don't scroll, just chill for like literally like 2 or 3 minutes. Or another thing would be to not listen to anything in the shower. I mean, just have some of these moments in your day where you just let your brain be quiet, or you just relax a little bit. Another thing would be maybe before bed. Like I said, I tend to read before bed. If you can just maybe lay there for a few minutes and meditate before bed, that would be good. I know my husband likes to stretch in the morning. So if you have a few minutes where you can just be in the quiet and stretch as you're waking up in the morning, all of these things would be a really good idea to just build some quiet time for your brain into your day. One that would be really hard for me, but I want to mention it, is to just let ideas simmer. So don't necessarily jump into a rabbit hole and try to learn all of the information at once. Don't automatically just jump into learning all of the sides of a situation that's going on. Just let it chill. Just let it simmer for a little bit. You can always like bookmark a video or whatever it is and just come back to it later. You don't have to immediately jump into things. I mean, how often are you in a conversation with someone where they might say something or you're trying to figure something out and then you just look it up on your phone? Like, just some of these things, you don't immediately have to have the answer to everything. So some things can just chill for a little bit. So, I mean, that's really it. I would love to hear your thoughts if you were someone who deals with information overload. Were any of these tips helpful? I know several of these I've done myself, and some of them really are very helpful. So I hope it's the same for you. Let me know if you have any tips, because this is something I still deal with, like I mentioned. So even though, sorry, there's a garbage truck. Even though I've gotten better about it over the years, it's still something that's like an ongoing struggle. So yeah, just give your brain some time to relax and just build that into your day. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Drop me a comment and a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. And hopefully I will feel better. Bye.